Hey, Renee.
Hey, Annette.
Today you wanted to talk about a certain subject of being hyper vigilant in a state of when you are in public or with other people. And I'm going to just give it to you to start bringing up the subject. So let's go.
Throw it at me. Well, I actually saw something on social media. Somebody had posted about being a person that anticipates because of the trauma in their life, the sexual abuse in their life. Um, it forced them to be this perspective or anticipating person in behaviors of other people and in things around them. And I'm like, we just talked about that in one of our other messages about what was stolen from us.
Mm,
And one of the things was like the peace was stolen from us because we have to be so extra alert, paying attention, not being relaxed. So I thought, let's draw that out some more. Because there's a
okay.
lot more to that.
Well, I remember talking about how our peace is stolen and just being able to be in an atmosphere, whether it's family gathering or friends meeting for dinner, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think we actually went a little deeper with being in a hyper state.
Right.
And I think that's where you really want to start. So I remember a time, Renee, where I would say I was very comfortable. I was very relaxed and I was on a computer at a hotel, busy, but I was focused on it. So very focused on what I was doing on this computer that was in a lobby. And all of a sudden, a good friend that both you and I know comes up from behind. I did not hear him walk up or anything and put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Hey, Annette." And he was starting to talk with me. So I thought my mind was on the computer monitor in front of me. I was focused. I was in a hotel in another state, and I didn't even realize how hyper focused I was or the hyper state I was in.
Yeah.
Because as soon as he did it, it my mind did not trigger. It was a friend doing it. My mind
Mm.
was this was a stranger who put his hand on me. And without a pre-thought, nothing like that happened. I immediately went back with my elbow and he got it in the stomach and all the air went out of him real fast. I did this and I turned to push and he was already going backwards. And I realized who it was, of course, in that.
Oh,
And you could apologize all you want. I was embarrassed. I'm so sorry. You snuck up on me. These words are coming into, and he was like, "I would never sneak up on you,"
mm.
type thing. And it was like, okay, I'm just sorry. He goes,
But part of
I'm
that,
sorry. I'm sorry. And I won't touch you from behind again. And
yeah, part of that story that you shared with me, though, that it was also in a hotel where a game had just finished and this whole huge baseball team came into the
the
front where the
hotel.
computers were at the hotel. So you had all these bodies around now, and I could see where that extra alert would be rising because of the
But I
multitudes
didn't
of
even,
people.
I wasn't even
Awesome.
aware of it.
Yeah.
But because of my trauma past, that old Annette girl was on alert to protect me, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I don't go out and am skittish of people. I'm not that way any longer, but I do see that. I don't know how to explain it. I do see just that extra alertness. I do pay attention to my surroundings. I do pay attention to see if there's someone else around me that's being abused. I pay attention to their body signs. It's just this extra paying attention that I do. That's almost like this natural.
Being super observant to your surroundings.
That's a great word. Yeah. Yeah. On
I
type
would
of,
say I would say the same for me. I've always been very observant of people's behavior, so much so that I developed over the years the skill of being able to read body language really well, which has helped me in different areas of my life.
you're
But
really good at that too.
because of the abuse, it caused me to mistrust people. That's sad. Because what if Renee, all of a sudden you said, "Hey, Ned, I'd really like you to meet this person at lunch and please come and show up." Well, I show up there at lunch, and if I'm in that hyper alert stage and I'm meeting this brand new person, this friend of yours who you have waited so long for me to meet, and you just have this love for this person and you want to share, that just, it stinks. That mistrust
Mm,
would be the first thing that shows up. That being on alert shows up.
mm.
That me watching their body language shows up. And by the way, this all shows up so naturally. I'm not sitting there wringing my hands and looking worried and all of this other thing. These things are all happening in my brain because of the trauma I had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gauging their tone of voice. Are they being sincere? What are they doing? Type situation. And there's a sadness there because
Mm,
I look at my grandchildren who don't have that in their life. And you can see the freedom of them and the curiosity in them when they want to meet this new person that you brought, Renee. And there's no hindrance. There's no them watching for this or looking for cues to escape or all these other things.
It's interesting you say that because, oh man, just recently we went to go look at a house. And Eddie immediately puts his hand out and shakes his hand, shakes the gentleman's hand. And I think this showed up there. I was not trusting this dude. He was brand new to me. And typically I am the social butterfly. I
You
am
are.
like, who are you? And how can we be friends? And, let's joke, let's have fun. And instead it was in my head, I'm looking you up and down to see if I can trust you with your word and what you're going to try to sell me. It was, I was more stand back or standoffish, if that makes sense. That was just not my typical self, but because we were going into, I think, looking at a house and me not trusting people well when it comes to, don't try to sell me a lie. Don't try to sell me something that's not good for me. I immediately already put up a judgment call on the guy because of his position,
The alert was out.
so fast.
Yeah.
I'm just now seeing that, like, oh man.
But it's good that you're aware of it now.
Yes.
Because that is not you.
No.
And if you were to see that guy all of a sudden later at the market during the week, and you were to see him again, now that you have spent even just a little bit of time with him, you might, and out of that surrounding, out of that office and everything, you might be more what I would call Renee.
Yeah. Oh, by the end of the time, by the end of the tour, end of the tour, I was thanking him for showing me where the step was so that I wouldn't trip on it. I was shaking his hand at the end and thanking him for his time and his information, but my trust did not just leap at him on meaty moment,
Again, it goes back to, it was a sales situation. And you have to be so careful. You can't just buy any house. You have health reasons of why you'd be on guard.
Yes.
For something like that.
Yes.
But you're not that way. If you and I were to go do a speaking engagement somewhere else and you were to meet somebody for the first time, that person wouldn't have showed up.
No.
In fact,
I would have
you'd
friends
be 5 steps ahead of me to go meet the people before I even caught up with you.
I already got my notebook with their name and number.
That's it.
Because I love people so much.
You do. You are very much a social butterfly. Yes. Definitely. Though I think it's sad, and it became a part of our life.
Right.
When we trusted in Christ and then took relationships to him, asking, is this safe? Is this good? God, I'm sensing something here with this person, but I'm not sure what it is. Can you show me? Can you make it more clear to me?
Yes.
That helped a lot with coming back down to peace and taking the perception meter that was just immediately with somebody new to take it down and give the person a chance to talk, to
Right.
give them a chance to just be who they are, and me not sitting there trying to judge them,
Or analyze.
analyze them.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's easy for us, I think, to analyze when we've walked through trauma. I think that's a good word. Analyzing, what's the motive? What's the motive behind this?
Yes. And we are along many, many years away from when we did have the childhood sexual abuse and everything. And you would say it has lessened over time, but there are things that could change it to with a PTSD. Somebody comes in and you're meeting them for the first time or something, and they mirror something that you had in your abuse in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not purposely trying to.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they wear the same aftershave, that could trigger you. So many different things in there. But I have found it's been less and less over the years. However, that skill that was developed, as in perceiving people's body language and movement and everything, I didn't even realize I had until, what would you say, 5, 6 years ago, till it was pointed out to me.
Mm.
And then I started getting asked to show up at meetings that I had no interest in showing up in those meetings, but they asked, would you show up at the meeting? We just want to have you be in the meeting, and you could let us know, what do you think of this person? What are your thoughts on what he's saying? What do you think of his character and such? And I would usually just sit in the room. I'm thinking, in the beginning, it was, I can't help you with that. How would I know? I don't even know the subject you guys are talking about. But just sitting in that room and watching the body language of the person, it wouldn't take long for me to be able to walk out of the room and sense that they're this, I could see this. When they say this, I don't think they're very fluent at it, because boy, they start doing the soothing part, all these different things, but it's not an accurate art, if that makes sense. But it made it so that it was something that, even though was not positive, God used in the end.
Right.
So that I could actually sit with somebody and bring them Christ, if that makes sense. Somebody who'd been sexually abused, who had not even said they'd been sexually abused, but with the perception that I had gotten over time, knowing something's going on here.
Yeah.
And if I bring up certain words, what is their reaction going to be?
Yeah.
Type thing I'm able to perceive pretty easily from that moment on.
Yeah.
And to me, God's used it for good, even though in the beginning it was all about mistrust, being on alert, not having peace, that type of situation. And yet
Yeah.
in the end, God's glorified in it, and people are able to be helped. And yeah, so
Well, if I can add to that about
sure.
you, Miss Annette,
Oh no.
it's a good thing, because I remember I remember when you were beginning to go to different meetings and being asked. I remember you even being invited to help a company with their interviewing skills, as they were interviewing to get, to
Mhm.
increase their employees. And I remember you sharing with me how, I don't remember all the words, but it was that you were just kind of surprised that other people didn't have this ability, and it wasn't because you were thinking of yourself bigger or better than other people, but it's just something that you do naturally, and that you could see when they're straining and they're rubbing the legs, or they're twitching, or they're playing with something, that you've been able to read body language. And it was just cool to hear that somebody you trained, you gave them new skill of how to interview, because they were able to pay attention to when somebody does this or somebody does that. This means they're lying, or this means you need to ask another question to see how they respond then to the next one. So you've taught other people how to read people in just like interviews to know to know if those folks were legit or if they're, because people can write a really good resume.
Yes.
We could make it look like we are all that on a resume, but when you ask the right questions and pay attention to the body responses, you get a whole nother story on a person. And that's things that you've been able to teach others. So that's a good that's come out of your.
It's a good that's come out of something that was very negative, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's also taught me that when we're in a room together and we're teaching people and stuff, or when we're in like a discipleship mode, you have taught me of the pause, the being comfortable with the silence, because even in that time, that you can read people in a good way. You can learn about their uncomfortableness of a subject that you're talking about, or you can learn about if they're tired or whatever. So if somebody finds themselves in this hypervigilant mode, Annette, obviously we can take that hypervigilant mode and use that to our benefit. We've learned thus far, to our benefit of being able to read people. But when we see that we're going over the top with that, when we're depending on ourselves instead of God, what would you suggest? When we're
the biggest thing is to be aware. So now that you know it happened one time with going into the house situation, I think you're going to be so much more aware, because I don't think this has happened for a long time for you to be at this hyper state of, dang it, I don't want to be mistreated.
Yeah.
Type situation. And because of that, of going on hyper alert, again, it's just because you want to survive.
I want a safe home, a safe mold-free, as close to mold-free home as possible. Yeah.
Right. So it's because you want to survive. And that's going to be when it happens with others. So that is a really good trigger to watch for, if it's going to be something for yourself and or others that you're attached to, that you're close to. And immediately go, okay, God, am I supposed to be watching closely, or should I sit back and you're going to show me? And that's usually what I do now. If I find myself in this hyper state, let's say all of a sudden we're meeting some new people for lunch, I'll tell you right now, it's going in my brain without me even controlling it about the new person. Why? Because they're a new person. It's just going to be that way. But at the same time, I'm able to relax so much more and ask personal questions of them, so that we could start laughing. Oh my goodness, you have 3 grandkids. Well, I have this many grandkids. Things like that we could share, and I could see and try to build that bridge of trust a little bit faster.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And ask for peace from God of it. And if I'm not getting that, sometimes I'll just excuse myself, go to the restroom and say, what's going on, God? Is there something going on? And just talking with him in the restroom will sometimes just give me the clarity of, maybe I just need to relax more.
Yeah.
Take some deep breaths, go back and relax more. And, or God, you show me what I'm supposed to be seeing.
And sometimes he shows you things.
Yeah.
Yep. And then you gotta, okay, now what do I do with this information, Lord?
Either way, I thank God that I'm keeping him to mind first.
Yes.
And I thank him for this opportunity to meet with you and this new person, and that whatever comes from it, that may he be glorified. I want to throw back to him, and I want to thank him for this time, because he says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything be thankful. And so just that little piece there reminds me, I'm not alone sitting there. I'm sitting there with God, Renee, and this new person.
True.
I am not alone. And when I was abused, I felt like I was alone. True. And in this case, I know now in my heart, mind, and soul that I am not alone. And that changes everything.
That's true. He goes before us, goes behind us, and is with us in it.
In it.
So may all of you who find yourself in this anticipation mode or hypervigilance mode, may you turn all of it to Christ, not just part of it, not just the part that has been turned into skills or the part of it that you like the ability of being able to do, and your perceptiveness on things. Those are good. It's great to have that extra sixth sense for some folks, but I always put that before God and let him put the peace in there as well. For sure. And continue to give you that discernment. Seek him in it. Because it's a beautiful place to be.
Yes.
That God is healing us, and he does take the ugly and turn it into beauty. So even this, he turns it into something good.
Well, thanks for talking to me about it today, Renee.
Well, thank you as well.
Bye.